Well, good morning, everybody. It is so good to be here with y'all today. Like Annabeth said, if you have seen me preach here before, good to see you again. If not, it's nice to meet you. My name is Luke Perrin, and I work at the North Carolina Attorney General's office, the Department of Justice. It's the same thing. I've had people ask me before, what's the difference between those two? And I usually just say, well, it kind of just depends on which one comes to mind first when I'm talking to somebody. The Attorney General leads the Department of Justice, but overall, we're a state agency. About 1,000 of us work across the state, most folks in our Raleigh office. And so if you go to downtown Raleigh fairly often, if you are looking at the state capitol from like the Hillsborough Street side, so like the if you're coming down Hillsborough Street and you see that, our office is right diagonally to the left of the capitol. And so it's actually kind of great that I get to walk out of my office every single afternoon, especially when it gets to like Christmas time and the like lights and stuff are up. I get to walk outside and literally go straight out the front door, and there's the state capitol, and it's wonderful. So, like I said, excited to be with y'all to talk about a very important topic, scams and frauds. You'll see behind me, this is the picture of your new Attorney General as of January 1st of this past year. Like to remind people of that because I think it's really important that people know who their elected officials are as well. So the Attorney General is one of 10, we'll call them elected Council of State officers. So those are the 10 folks that every single person, when you go to the ballot every 4 years, so it's always during those kind of 4-year presidential year intervals, those are the folks that are the statewide races. So that's the governor, that's the lieutenant governor, secretary of public instruction, go all the way down the board. But 10 of those, and the Attorney General serves as the state's top lawyer and top law enforcement officer. And I hate that the department tells me to tell people that because I think it creates the biggest misconception ever. Because when you hear that, you probably think to yourself that we oversee all of the lawyers in North Carolina and that we oversee all of the cops in North Carolina. And the reality is we do neither of those things. But we do a lot of really cool and really important stuff. And I like to frame it under these three kind of buckets. So we work to protect the people of North Carolina through, you can see it on the board, number one, preventing crime and supporting law enforcement, safeguarding consumers, and then defending the state, its people, and their constitutional rights. Most of what I'm going to talk today is about that second point right there, so I'm not going to touch on it now, but I'll give y'all a couple examples just so you can kind of see how broad our office's work is on those other little buckets. So preventing crime and supporting law enforcement. Our office does not prosecute people day in and day out. So in North Carolina, local district attorneys who you also elect have what's called original jurisdiction, which basically means they get first dibs on a case. So when somebody is charged with a crime, a district attorney is the one that prosecutes that. In a rare occasion, we might prosecute that crime, but only if the district attorney asks us to do so. Usually it's one of two things that happens. First is if it's a resource issue. So maybe let's say it's a rural county in North Carolina. I'm from Alexander County. It's a very small county out west. Maybe there's a resource issue and they just need some kind of specialized prosecutor for something. So it's some crime that has maybe really never popped up in Alexander County, and then all of a sudden they're dealing with it and they just want an extra set of hands. The other time it happens, and this doesn't happen as often as that first, is if there's any kind of perceived or real corruption or conflict of interest. And so as an example of what that looked like out west, a few years ago, our office prosecuted a district attorney. Because as you might guess, if a district attorney gets indicted of a crime, there's a little bit of a conflict to have that own district attorney's office prosecute their boss. So that went to us. We prosecuted that case. Thankfully, the DA resigned before the prosecution was finished, made it a little bit easier. But just an example of kind of what that work looks like. We also train all law enforcement officers. So while we don't oversee law enforcement officers in the state of North Carolina, we do train every single one of them. So our office runs criminal justice training and standards, which is quite literally all of the training that a law enforcement officer will get from the time they decide, hey, I want to become a sworn law enforcement officer to, for example, this happens very often, which is somebody who maybe, for example, works at the Raleigh Police Department and they want to transfer to the Wake County Sheriff's Office for a different position. Different offices have different requirements for those kinds of things, and so maybe they might need a couple extra certifications for that transfer to happen so that they can consider it basically a promotion. Our office helps facilitate that. We'll say, okay, you need this credit, and this credit. This is when we offer these classes. This is when we offer these trainings. helping folks do that. Defending the state, its people, and their constitutional rights. We represent the state in any kind of litigation brought by or to the state. That happens in two buckets, one of which happens way more often than the other. So we represent all state government agencies. We are quite literally their lawyers. And so anytime somebody sues the state government for whatever department it may be, whether you're suing the Department of Agriculture, whether it's Health and Human Services, for whatever issue, anytime somebody sues the state, our lawyers are the ones who represent that agency in court. General statutes have had it that way for years upon years. It doesn't matter the merits of whatever it is. We represent the state in those proceedings. We also represent the state in litigation the state brings forward against a business, an organization, another government entity. So anytime you hear that the state of North Carolina sued over X, that is our office. A lot of that happens in our consumer protection work, and that's why a lot of this is so crucial. You might be thinking to yourself, how does somebody who went to Duke Divinity School and was preaching here just a couple years ago end up working at the AG's office? I got obsessed with consumer protection stuff when I was in policy school. So I was doing divinity school at the time and took a pretty hard pivot into thinking about how churches look at debt and how they look at just kind of other just general consumer protection areas. That led me to work on a lot of issues with student loans in churches, which led me to work on student loans just generally as a policy area, which led me to work on lending in the AG's office. And that's just an interesting trajectory. But it shows why all of this stuff is important, because I want to emphasize to y'all right now, and I'll keep saying it throughout this today, is that we cannot do all of this by ourselves. We need individuals, we need organizations, we need people talking to people about this kind of stuff, because consumer protection changes every single day. I get the question now, and I'm sure somebody's going to ask me about this at some point. They're going to say, well, what about AI? And my answer to that is, well, that changes every single day too. And so that's why talking about this stuff is really important. So our Consumer Protection Division, it's the largest division at DOJ. So I mentioned that we have about 1,000 people who work at DOJ overall. Anywhere on depending on where we're at staffing-wise, about 70 to 80, so getting close, about 7% of our department are just folks who work in consumer protection. Those are lawyers, those are administrative folks, they're what we call consumer specialists, but we investigate consumer complaints that are submitted to our office. North Carolina has a law, it's called the Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices, that is a whole lot of lawyer stuff, and I'm not a lawyer, and so I don't ever try to get into that stuff, but all I know is that it says businesses can't hurt people. And that law gives us the ability to investigate complaints when they arise. And so we have a form on our website you can fill out, and I have some little sheets over there and some other little handouts too, so feel free to take some as you go. That kind of walks you through what this process looks like, but somebody can submit a complaint to our office when they feel as if they've been wronged by a business or an individual that is offering goods or services, those kinds of things. And we'll see it happen in a lot of different ways, and I'll show you some kind of data about that in a second, but I'll give you an example of one of the ones that we see very often, which is automobiles. Somebody buys a car for their granddaughter. Their granddaughter's turning 16, and they decide to buy her a car for her birthday, and they buy it, and they take it, and they get it looked at by just their local mechanic. Mechanic says, this looks like a good car to me. I don't see any issues with it, and so you buy it, and then about 2 months after you buy the car, the transmission goes out. And then 2 months after you get the transmission fixed, the brake pads start to go. And then 2 months after that, the timing belt goes. And you start thinking to yourself, this car's not very good. And I'm wondering if I got screwed over. You can file a complaint with our office. And our office is going to look at this complaint, and we are going to ask you some very important questions. But the most important question is going to be, what do you consider to be fair restitution? Like, what do you want done? And you might say, I want them to buy the car back, or I want them to pay for the repair, or I want them to do the repairs themselves. I want them to fix the car and then, let me have it. We're going to say, cool, thanks. This is where it gets really interesting. So we can't provide individual legal advice or representation to folks. What we can do is arbitrate these kind of disputes that arise. And so we'll get this complaint back, and we're going to send it to that business on your behalf. And we're going to send them a letter, and it's going to come on the AG's letterhead. You can see the seal on the bottom right here. Is this a pointer? You can see it's going to have the nice little seal of the AG's office, and it's going to say, North Carolina Department of Justice under Attorney General Jeff Jackson, our office has received a consumer complaint that alleges that you this. You have 14 days to reply. And that's where it gets really fun, because there's a lot of different options that come out of this. And what I always emphasize to people is that there are a lot of people who are trying to do you wrong, and don't get me wrong in that. And if you are harmed by a business or somebody that is just doing sales that is not good at their job, those kinds of things, if you lose money or have the potential to lose money, I don't want to discredit that, because that is your hard-earned money, and I don't want to take it away from you. More, though, than businesses that are trying to do you harm intentionally, are businesses in North Carolina that probably just shouldn't be operating generally, or they're just really bad at running their business. And so way more often than you think, people tell me this, well, if you just send a letter, like how often do they actually respond? I don't have the full data on that, but it's way more often than you think that the business owner looks at that letter and goes, oh, yeah, we'll handle this. Like, you don't have to be involved, especially when it's like a very small mom and pop store. I'll give you an example. During the hurricane, our office enforced the price gouging law in North Carolina, which basically says you can't raise the prices on goods or services during a time of emergency. Seems like a pretty fair and decent thing to not raise prices on people, when their homes are flooded. We received a lot of price gouging complaints last year out west as a result. One of those examples was a grocery store, and the grocery store had raised prices on some of the stuff that they had, because obviously they need to make money too. They're a small business, they're hurting, and so they raised prices on just stuff they were selling. We got price gouging complaints that they were charging way more than they had advertised in their flyer. The mail hadn't been delivered that week because of the hurricane, and so people were operating off of the sales from last week and what the prices were listed previously. And so we got complaints, and we called this. It's a very small grocery store out west in a very small town, and we said we received this price gouging complaint. And as soon as the owner of that store got it, she said, oh my gosh, I had no idea, one, that this was a law, and two, that I couldn't do this. Like, what can I do to make it right? And so we worked with her to make it right with those folks who had filed the complaint. So all that to say, there are a lot of different avenues that these things go, but it starts with the how can we help you kind of mediate it. But occasionally it rises to something that our office will get, we'll just say, more involved in. And so the Unfair and Deceptive Trade Practices Law says that we have the ability to sue businesses and others on the state's behalf to enforce the law. When we notice a pattern of complaints, we are not just allowed by the law, but compelled to act to protect the interests of consumers. So you can see some numbers on the board. Since 2017, so in the past 8 years, our office won back more than $3 billion for consumers in North Carolina. I will say, most of that came from just a few cases with a lot of money involved. But there are some of these little cases where, I say little, like I was going to say $150,000, like that's not a lot of money to me. In the grand scheme of state budgeting, $150,000 is not that huge of amount of money, but smaller businesses that are trying to hurt people, that are working against the interests of consumers. As you can see, just last year, I want to look just so I get it right, we got 19,000 consumer complaints submitted to our office. We get multiple complaints a day. Those complaints are all received and given to what's called a consumer specialist, which is somebody that only works on that issue. So we have a bucket of about 12 to 13 different issues: automobiles, credit cards, social media. When a complaint comes in, it's going to go to somebody who just works on that. And they're the ones that are going to start working on it with the communication. And depending on the nature of the complaint, then it might go to the lawyer that works on that area. I can attest to y'all that I filled out a consumer complaint earlier this year over a Facebook account that was hacked years ago. Somebody tried to impersonate me. They tried to get my friends to give them money by pretending to be me. I will say that was on me for when I made my Facebook account 15 years ago, not having a strong enough password. I will own that. That's on me. However, I don't think that gives somebody license to try to hurt people pretending to be me. I tried to get in contact with Facebook. Facebook has awful customer service, and we are actually suing them for a different issue right now, and so I don't want to speak a ton, especially because I know Annabeth's recording me right now, and I don't want to get deposed again, because I've already had to provide some things for that lawsuit. It's really fun, y'all. But I submitted a complaint to our office and said, Facebook is not helping me get my Facebook account back. And so our consumer protection division reached out to Facebook on my behalf and said, this is this person's driver's license. This is him. This is his Facebook account. Why won't you give it back to him? Within about 72 hours, I had full access back to that Facebook account. And I promptly deleted it and was done with it. But just an example of how that process works. To give you one last example before we start talking really about the tips and those kinds of things, how many of y'all noticed a few years ago that your cell phone started flagging potential spam calls? I think it's a great tool. And it didn't just pop up overnight in the way that, you would just have an update on your phone. So that came from our work on what we call the Anti-Robocall Task Force. So we got 51 states attorneys general. That's all 50 states in DC. And I cannot emphasize to you enough that when you get all 50 states in a deeply divided political environment and DC on the same side, there is some teeth to this argument. And we sat down with the telecom providers, AT&T, Verizon, and Sprint, and said, hey, y'all aren't doing enough to protect people from robocalls. And of course, as you'd guess, they said, well, yes, we are. We're doing everything that we can. And we said, that's great. Do you want to say that under oath if we sue you over it? They agreed to come to the table. I don't like to use the term blackmail. We'll just say aggressive negotiation. We'll put it at that. And we sat down with them, and we came up with a list of, we call them anti-robocall principles that say, we are asking you to abide by these principles and enforce the law as it is already written. Otherwise, we will litigate. That brought them to the table. One of those was that they had to increase not just funding to make sure that they had staff members to do it, but increase the tools that they used for spam detection. That happened because us and other attorneys general basically got involved with this fight. And so they started adding spam detection on their phones. Not sure if that's something they would want to add without us being involved in it. So that's just one specific example. And then lastly, you can just see on the board, those are the complaints that we get every year. Robocalls, about 1/5 of the complaints that we get. I will say that number is going down from last year, and I wish that I could take full credit for this and say that that is the hard work of the Department of Justice. And I do believe that deep in my core that we are working hard on this issue, but the real reality of it is I'm a huge data guy and I just love to dig into numbers. The research shows that there's actually just fewer phones out in the world. 10 years ago, people would have a landline, they might have a cell phone, they'd have a work desk phone. 5 years ago, people had all of those and they would also might have a work cell phone. Now, I just have a cell phone. I've never had a landline. I don't think I'm going to have a landline. I have an office phone. There are just fewer phone numbers out in the world. So that number has been going down every single year just a little bit. Motor vehicle complaints is usually right behind it, though, in terms of what we get. And like I said, you can go across the board. And these are those, I mentioned those buckets earlier that we have folks that just work on these issues. Those are those buckets. So there are people whose whole job at our office is to investigate complaints regarding credit cards or you name it. All right, getting into the fun stuff here. You can read the definition on the board. Thank you, Merriam-Webster. The definition of a scam is that it is a dishonest scheme that is aimed at taking money or something of value from an unsuspecting individual or a group of individuals. The second point, I will emphasize this, that everyone is susceptible of being scammed, regardless of any of the descriptors, age, gender, race, religion, education, you name it. I'm going to make this a little bit interactive here and ask first and foremost, does anybody think they know what the most likely scam victim in the United States is in terms of age? Which age group is most likely to get scammed? Seniors. All right, does anybody have a different guess than that, or are we going to cross the board? Under 30? Anybody else? Anybody? 18 to 24-year-olds, most likely scam victim in the United States. I will say people over 65, that 66 to... The age clumping is weird when I look at this data because it's 18 to 24, it's a 6-year gap, and then it's 66 to 84. I'm like, that's a larger gap. But that second group, the seniors, older folks, they are more likely to lose money to scams because typically they have more money than the 18-year-old to lose. However, 18 to 24-year-olds are more likely than seniors to get scammed. Second question, I have talked about this so many times since I've been at DOJ in the last 2 years, and I've never had anybody get this right, and so I always like to preface it that truly, if you get this question right, you are the first person who has ever gotten it right before. There's a lot on that, I know, but there is one thing that makes somebody more likely than anyone else to be scammed. And it's not any of these. It's none of these descriptors that I listed. What do you think it is that makes somebody more likely to get scammed than anybody else? Have a cell phone? It's a good answer. It's not correct, but answering the cell phone also probably does make you more, or not probably, it does make you more likely, but it's not the number one predictor. It's family related, also a good answer. Trusting, also, we got some great answers here. None of them are correct. Anybody want to throw a last one out? I mean, it's true. Someone who has been scammed before. Most scam victims are repeat scam victims. I cannot tell you how often we hear this in our office, where we'll get notified, because most of the time when we hear about scam victims, it's not somebody coming to our office to tell us that they got scammed. It's that we get a report from the Secret Service is actually the agency that runs like interstate wire fraud cases. It's kind of cool. I learned that recently when I started working at DOJ. We get reports from the Secret Service every single quarter. And these reports say, these are the list of the fraud victims that we've identified in your state. And our consumer folks go through that list, and most of the people on that list who have been identified by the federal government as fraud victims, we've never heard from them. They haven't reached out to us. And that, therein lies the problem. People don't like to talk about that they got scammed. When we do call these people, because we have an obligation to reach out to these folks when we get that list from Secret Service or from the Federal Trade Commission, or when banks will call our office and say, hey, we have a $100,000 like wire fraud, we've frozen this. People aren't willing to talk about it. They think to themselves, I should have known this was a scam, and I should have put the red flags were going off, but I didn't think about it, and I freaked out. And I can get myself out of this, though, because I recognize now that it was a scam, so I can figure this out. And they don't want to tell their spouse, or they don't want to tell their kids. They don't want to tell their Sunday school class. They don't want to tell their bank sometimes. And they think that they can figure it out. And so they go to maybe a lender to get money to pay off what they've lost. Maybe it's a small sum of money, but in the grand scheme of things, like somebody smaller amount lost in something like this. They've lost $500. And they need that $500 to pay for whatever it is. So they go to a lender and they take out a loan to pay it back. Anybody know what the interest rate cap in North Carolina is? What's the highest possible rate you can take out on a loan? It's 36%. It's the lowest in the country. Go to South Carolina. It's in the 550s. 36%. And you're thinking to yourself, if you had any kind of loan that was 36%, that's insane. They'll take that loan out. They can't pay it back. They start to snowball. They're more likely then to be scammed than any other person. And that is why when I say it takes everybody, that's why this education piece is really, really important. Talking about what we're seeing, not just our office, but what you're seeing as individuals. So scammers scam in 3 different ways. You might guess what they are. Phones, text messages, and the internet. Those are the kind of the 3 main ways. There are different kinds of ways we still see it, but not as much. We don't see a lot of like door-to-door scams anymore like we did 10 years ago. Not as much postal fraud as well, just because people are sending and using less mail. People are more using phones for text messages, calling, and the internet goes up every single year. These are the most common scams that our office got last year in terms of money lost. You might recognize what some of these are, but I'll walk through each of them. The number one money loss, and this is the case every single year in our office, is what we call sweepstakes and lottery scams. You might have seen one of these perhaps. Congratulations, you have won the Publishers Clearinghouse this year. You won the HGTV Dream Home. Think to yourself, I didn't even know that I signed up for it this year. All we need is for you to write us a blank check and we're going to bounce it. Or all we need is your routing number and your account number and we're going to send you the money. Last year, our office received notification. Again, most of these people didn't write to us. We heard from somebody else. 91 people said that they had fallen for this type of scam in North Carolina. Out of that 91, our office was able to verify that 24 people lost money. Of those 24 people, they lost on average just below $85,000 each. It's a lot of money. And the really sobering truth of this is most of them are not getting that money back. Typically, when we do get a report of something like this, if it hasn't come from the federal government, so if somebody comes to our office and says, I lost $85,000 to a scam, our first question is, have you called the FBI? And if the answer to that is no, we say, here's the phone number for the field office in Raleigh. Call them, tell them that so-and-so in the Consumer Protection Division sent you. Call us after you call them. Because most of these are overseas. Most of these are, again, large sums of money, and that's where a lot of federal laws really kick in. And so it's admittedly, though, really hard to get that money back from somebody that's operating in a different country. Next, most called imposter scams. This might as well just be somebody that you assign value to. So your bank, a government agency, your pastor. We see this all the time. We'll get them, people will send these emails that it'll say, hey, it's me, Pastor so-and-so from your church. And I'm in a bind, I'm in a meeting, but I need your help with something. We're doing this with this nonprofit that we work with, and people go to great lengths to figure these things out. And they'll say, I need you to get me some gift cards so that you can help pay for this. And when you go look, and the email address is typically and I'm going to use Annabeth here as an example. Hope this hasn't happened to her. She hasn't told me if it happened to her, but it'll be like Pastor Annabeth, and there's usually like some like way that'll like show it. So it might be like Pastor Annabeth Mann, like before, like using her previous name before she got married, 12@gmail.com, or Annabeth@Greystone@gmail.com. Somebody that you've already assigned value to in your life, that you trust. And by doing that, that's going to put your guard down just a little bit. Third most, romance and friendship scams. These are on the rise every single year. These are longer term scams that we see where people typically on social media are trying to establish a long-term romance/friendship. And I say long-term meaning anywhere from a couple months to a year, where they're trying to develop a relationship with you entirely on social media. You will never see their face. You might hear their voice, but they'll comment on your profile. And typically, actually, what these folks will do, and it's despicable, but they will go onto Facebook and they will look at people who have listed that they are widowed, or that they might be divorced, or that they can find that public information that they no longer have a spouse, or that they are single generally, and they will try to prey on that loneliness. So they'll comment and they'll say, hey, I noticed your profile. I think you're very beautiful. I'd like to get to know you. And then you'll message back and forth with them, usually on Facebook Messenger is the way that they use it. And you'll go back and forth, and they'll ask questions. And again, you might talk to them on the phone, but you'll never see their face. And then eventually there's going to come an ask. And the ask is going to be, well, I'm driving through Raleigh next weekend to go visit my niece. She goes to school at State, and I'd love to get coffee with you. And you think to yourself, oh, that's nice. I've been talking with this person for 6 months. Would love to meet them finally. So you agree. And then it's I had a flat tire this morning, and they can't patch it. They're going to have to replace it, and I don't have the $150 to replace the tire. Would you be able to just send me the money, and I'll pay you back when I meet you? As you might guess, the second that money hits, that account is gone from existence. You will never hear from them again. These folks are operating hundreds upon hundreds of these scams at the same time. So they're doing it to people constantly, trying to make that money. Tech support scams, we are actually seeing these a little bit on the decline from previous years, but that's hey, it's us Windows, or it's Microsoft, or it's Apple. There's a problem with your device. You need to give me control of your computer right now, or you'll get a pop that says, your computer has been infected with 7,000 viruses. Please click this link. If you ever see that, close your computer. Just close it immediately. Call our office. Call someone that you trust. Call your kids. Call your grandkids. Call whomever. Talk to them about it. Or call the customer support for whatever it is. If you have a Windows laptop, call them. Say, I got this pop-up. What do I do? Most of the time, your computer is not infected. And that pop-up, they're trying to get you to click the link for a variety of reasons, which I'll talk about in just a second. But that's the number one thing you should do, is just close it and call someone who you trust. And then we call these grandparent scams, but we might as well call them just family member scams. This is a relatively new phenomenon. You might have seen this happen before. This is somebody pretends to be a family member. My grandmother had this happen to her a couple years ago, and somebody pretended to be my youngest sister, who is, at the time was 19 years old. And they pretended that they said that it was like a woman's voice on the phone, and she said that something was wrong, and that don't tell my mom, but she's down at the courthouse, and I just need $100, like to get out and like, we'll talk about it later. I knew I screwed up. I'm sorry, but like, please don't tell mom. The giveaway in that is that my sister doesn't go by her first name. She goes by her middle name. That's what gave it away to my grandmother. But people will do this. And I know what you're thinking. I recognize my grandkid's voice. If I heard it, I would know that it's them. And the scammers know that. They also know that if you take 5 seconds to think that your granddaughter might be in trouble, their foot's in the door. You're already thinking about it. You're starting to get worried. You are letting your guard down. In terms of phone scams, if you take nothing away from anything that I say today, let it be this first point. If you do not recognize the number of the person that is calling you, do not answer the call. Even if it doesn't say potential spam, do not answer the call. Even if you think that you have an important phone call from your doctor coming today, they will leave a voicemail if it is important. And here is why. I'm going to get deep in the weeds with y'all about how some of these like scam operations work. Most scammers don't want to spend a long time trying to take money from you. Those ones I talked about, the romance and friendship scams, that's the minority. That's the exception to the norm. Most scammers, like most people in the world, just want to make a quick buck. The easiest way for a scammer to make money is to sell your phone number to someone else. The moment you answer that phone call, and typically, if it's somebody that's trying to scam, a lot of times you'll answer it, there's nobody there, or you'll just hear a beep and the call will end. Somebody's not going to go back and forth with you on the phone necessarily. It does happen, but all they're trying to do is verify that you are a live person. That is, I like to use this term, useful idiot, that is useful to them because they are oftentimes unintentionally being an idiot in answering that phone. It's an old KGB term. I took a class on spying in undergrad, and that term has stuck with me. That's what the Russians used to call Americans that would like unwittingly help them with their espionage. They're a useful idiot. They just want to sell your numbers to other people. Luke, how did they get my number? Well, a long time ago, you probably checked a box that said, I give Amazon permission after 15 years to sell my data for whatever purposes they might be. Once it's out there, those numbers, that's just an example. We're not suing Amazon, so if an Amazon lawyer ever sees this recording, please don't depose me. But the numbers get out there in the wild, and they start getting sold. And when you answer those robocalls, you are quite literally setting yourself up for more of them. Truly, the best thing that you can do, not respond. If they don't leave a voicemail, delete that. If you're on an iPhone or an Android that is anywhere close to the newest updates, you might notice that if you don't recognize a call or a text, when you go to delete it, it'll say delete and report junk. It's a great tool. It's going to do a couple things. First, it's going to delete the message, and it's going to delete the call, so you don't accidentally call them back or accidentally respond. It's going to block them, so they can't use that number. I know what you're thinking. Well, they're just going to use a different number. Eventually, they get the point. And the big thing that it does is it actually reports it to our office. So when it gets reported as junk, it goes to your telecom provider, it goes to Verizon, and as part of those robocall principles I talked about, Verizon has to basically every month, I don't know if it's every month or every quarter or whatever, but all those carriers, they have to let us know about the reports that they've gotten. So they send us those numbers too. So we get them. That's a way that you can help us out if you're feeling, kindness in your hearts to help our office out, but it's also helping you because when we get these reports, we're able to look for trends. We're able to figure out where these things are coming from. Do you remember a few months ago, it was the beginning of this year, about February, you might have started getting text messages that let you know that you had an unpaid toll. Yep. And you thought to yourself, well, I can't remember I got one that said that I had an unpaid toll in New York State. I've been to New York twice in my life, once to the city, once to just like upstate New York, Buffalo. Neither of those times did I have a car, but apparently I have an unpaid toll. Because we got reports from folks who were sending these in, we were actually able to figure out where those originated. And we were able to figure out that they were actually folks that were operating in Canada. And I'll use the term that my boss used in a meeting about this earlier this year. he said, he's like, well, technically, I don't think we can publicly name the place that they were operating, but they were probably talking in French between texting people about their toll roads. So you can kind of get an idea. This is where it was coming from. Why? Because they were sent into our office. If you ever are concerned, let's say you do answer that phone call. If you get concerned, it sounds like just very simplistic for me to say, but I think reiterating is important. Hang up the phone. Call someone that you trust and say, this is what is happening. Let me get a second opinion on it. Heck, call our office. Ask us about it. We have a live phone staff, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. Not all state agencies can say that, which I think should be an expectation for your state agencies, as an aside, to answer phones during business hours on weekdays. But we have people 8 to 5, Monday through Friday, that will answer your call. And will tell us like what did they say on the call? And we can help walk you through that specifically. You can, again, report them to our office also through that way, but in a much easier way is to just, like I said, delete it, report it as junk. It'll get sent to us as well. If you don't want to write those down, I have some of the handouts over there as well that have this number on it as well. So you can very easily send those to our office so that we are, at worst, able to just keep a good record of this. At best, hopefully enforce the law. Text message scams. I'll point these out. The number one far and far away text message scam that our office gets are what we call missed delivery notifications. You might have seen these. Hey, it's us, the Postal Service. You had a package that was supposed to be delivered today. Please click this link to schedule a new pickup time. What's the third word in the acronym USPS? Postal. Postal Service is ever going to contact you. How do you think they will contact you? By mail. Same goes with just about every government agency. With the exception usually of law enforcement, usually they just come to your door if they need to contact you. Which is what I was telling people. I said that one time and I was like, well, they'll write you by mail. And I was just like, well, when the sheriff came to tell me this, I was like, oh, that's different. But all government agencies, for the most part, our office included, we're going to write to you by mail for that first contact. And what they're trying to do with that missed delivery notification, you click that link, they're not trying to take money from you right then and there. It's the inside baseball of it that I mentioned earlier. They're trying to prove that you are going to respond so they can sell your number with a batch of other numbers to someone else so you'll keep getting these. We call these "is this you" messages, but really this is just a way that's trying to, again, to get a response. You might just get a text message from a number that you don't know that might just say, "Who is this?" That's all the message will say. Something along those lines, just trying to purposefully get a response. And usually, even if you reply to them, they're not going to keep going back and forth with them. And actually, one of the worst things you can do, and my dad is the prime culprit of this, and I tell him all the time, I'm like, Dad, don't do that. And he's like, I don't care. It's fun for me. My dad likes to play with them. My dad likes to respond or answer. He likes to answer the call, and he likes to mess with them, and he'll put on like an accent to try to mess with them, and then like he'll go back and forth. And I'm like, Dad, I'm sure that gives you so much free serotonin. I'm sure that makes you feel so happy. All you are doing is setting yourself up to get called tomorrow. I don't get a lot. I mean, this is anecdotal here. I don't get a lot of robocalls. I don't answer them. It does take time. People say, well, I don't answer it and I still get them. It does oftentimes take time, but truly just not responding to those phone calls, to those text messages. You can see the rest of these: bank accounts closing, credit cards locked, those kinds of things. If you don't know how your bank's going to contact you if you have a fraud issue pop up, that's something I'd recommend you go do today. Call your bank, go by the branch. Different banks do it different way. You can opt in sometimes to text messages where they'll say like, hey, there's been a dispute, there's been an issue. I do it via email. That's the way that I do it with my bank. I like the email communication just because that's easier for me. But ask them, how are they going to alert you if there is fraud on your account or on a credit card? And yeah, just across the board, those just kind of general like, hey, there's been an issue with this item, this subscription that you already have. In terms of text scams, a lot of these, it's the same as the phone stuff. But one thing I want to emphasize here is don't respond with the word stop. You might think to yourself, and sometimes this does work for like reputable, like actual sales people that are like working in this industry. Responding stop will opt you out of the mailing list. But it doesn't always work in terms of that because they might not be running a reputable business with an actual mailing list. So don't just assume the word stop will delete it. I have the number on the board, 7726. You can send text messages or things that you've gotten via text to that number to report them. It's the same process, though, again, as I said. It's much easier just to delete, report as junk. It'll do the same thing as just sending a message to 7726. But that alerts the federal authorities, eventually gets to us, as well as your carrier provider. Online prevention. I will emphasize a very important point here that I'm going to say all of us collectively, not just y'all, everyone, myself included, because I had my Facebook account hacked, like I said years ago, are sharing way too much information on public websites. When you make a Facebook account, did you know that when you make that account from the get-go, all of the stuff that you're sharing is public to the world? When you make a brand new account, when you made it however many years ago, your privacy settings have it so that you're sharing stuff with the whole world, with the public. You have to manually go into your settings and choose settings, privacy, who I want to share stuff with, to just your friends or friends of friends. Do that today. Look at your Facebook, see who you're sharing stuff with, and think to yourself, is the stuff I'm sharing on Facebook stuff that I would want to share with the whole world? Do I want the whole world to see pictures of my grandkids? Do I want the whole world to know where I'm going on vacation this week? Think about those kinds of things. And another thing that we're seeing a lot of on social media are folks not just trying to steal your passwords, but trying to steal the answers to your security questions. This is a new phenomenon. We've seen it a lot on Facebook where you'll see these posts that are asking these, I like to just point out that they're usually like nostalgic kind of posts where they'll ask questions. You might just see, it looks like we'll call it a meme. It'll just be a picture and the text will just say, what's the car you passed your driver's test in? And you have everybody loves to go to the comments and say, well, I passed it in this and this and this, because we love to think about those things. We love to talk about the car, like I can tell you the car I passed my driver's test in. Or it's what was the number one song the year you graduated from high school? And you think to yourself back to what that song was. You're like, yeah, that was a good song. And you just go back and forth. There are scam artists that are purposefully trying to get the answers to your security questions because those are some of the most used security question answers in the world. I'll give you a great example of this one here. How far away do you live from the place you were born is one of those ones that we see a lot. It's a question people will just say, and we'll talk about like, oh, I'm from so-and-so. I told y'all I'm from Western North Carolina. I'm from Taylorsville. Anybody familiar with Alexander County in here? Alexander County. Alexander County has one high school. It's Alexander Central. Used to be Taylorsville High School years ago. Now it's Alexander Central. All you have to know about me, and this is public in my Facebook profile, or it was years ago, is that I'm from Alexander County. I'm from Taylorsville. If you knew that I grew up there, you knew that I went to Alexander Central High School, because that is the only high school you can go to. We just got like our first private school like 5 years ago in Alexander County, shockingly to me. One of the top 10 most used security questions in the United States, what is your high school mascot? High school mascot at Alexander Central and Taylorsville High School has not changed. It has been a cougar since Taylorsville High School opened up in the 1950s. All you have to know is that's where I'm from, and if that's my security question on Facebook, you're getting there already. Other ones that we see, what's your mom's maiden name? What's your father's middle name? Those are really easy to find for people. Those kind of public records are not difficult. So if that's the case, and my two security questions on Facebook are, what's your high school mascot and what's your mom's maiden name, doesn't matter if they know my email for my Facebook account. They've got my security questions. They can reset the account. Think about those kinds of things. You would probably think to yourself that this guy is a freak if I walked up to Annabeth on the street and I'd never met her, and the first thing I said to her was, what's your high school mascot? Who is this guy? How is Facebook any different when you're sharing those things with everyone in the world? So think about it. What are you willing to share? In terms of payment, this is the last thing I'll talk about, and if you have any questions, happy to answer them. Our office recommends that people avoid using debit cards, not because they're not safe, but because the fraud, or just the time in which fraud or disputes may happen with a debit card. If somebody steals your debit card, either physically or swipes the number, and takes out $1,000 in purchases on whatever it may be, that money is out of your account and your bank will probably give you a credit, but it might take time. If that happens on a Saturday, it might take until Monday for them to give you the credit. If you have a credit card, you have a month-long billing to have those disputes come into play, and that money's not out of your account immediately. Unless you have a gift card, do not pay with a gift card. If someone says the only way that you can pay for this is with a gift card, that should be a red flag going off. You want to use a gift card, it should be one that you already have in your possession that you are itching to use. I love using gift cards. When I have them, I spend them within a couple days just because I'm like, this is free money. Like this isn't real money. So avoid using that. The same with if somebody ever says the only way you can pay is with a wire transfer. Or one of the big ones that we're seeing, and I don't know if y'all have a deep familiarity with this, are cryptocurrency. Things like Bitcoin. It's a type of currency that's basically very unregulated, but we're seeing an issue pop up now with what we call these Bitcoin ATMs. So if you go to a normal ATM like you would in a grocery store or outside of, not usually outside the banks because the bank ATMs are usually a little bit better, but if you go to like a cash points that's in the parking lot of a shopping center, you can sell cryptocurrency or buy it, which is basically kind of just like a unenforced asset that you can kind of play around with. But we are seeing a massive uptick in what we call Bitcoin scams, which is when somebody will say, I need you to convert your money to this currency. It's either an investment opportunity or that's the only way you can pay for me to unfreeze your computer because this stuff is even more unregulated than taking money via wire, all of these different areas. That's something, it's a very relatively new phenomenon. Like in the last couple of years, it's popped up, but we're seeing it more and more at ATMs all across the board. Our office is actually working on an initiative about this, which you might have seen. There was a news, ABC 11 did a piece about 3 weeks ago about it. We're partnering with the Secretary of State. We're trying to get signs in every single grocery store and gas station, you name it, in North Carolina. And we really have to get the sheriffs to opt in to help us with it because it is all voluntary. But we're trying to put a sign up that says, if you're being told you can only pay via Bitcoin, you are being scammed. Call this number now. And then lastly, PayPal, Venmo, those kinds of things. We call them peer-to-peer payment apps, which is basically a way of being able to just transfer money to somebody else without having to write a check or going through like a traditional wire. Those are actually really safe. There's an asterisk here, there's a condition, and that condition is if you know the person. They're in a lot of ways no different than if I were to walk up to you on the side of the street and give you $20 and then come back a month later and find you again and say, can I have my $20 back? Pretty much the honor system to say, do you pretend that you know me or not? Those apps are very safe as long as you know who the person is. And so when people will file complaints and say, well, I gave $1,000 to somebody on PayPal that I didn't know, it's really hard. There's not a lot of fraud detection between people that are making payments on them. But if you know who the person is, they are really, really safe for you to use. And then lastly, it's not on the slides, but I will emphasize it as well. If you have the option to pay for something somewhere with your card, we'll call it a tiered list of the ways that you should kind of pay in terms of protection. If you have like an Apple Pay or anything like that on your phone, that's actually the safest way that you can pay for something at a card reader. Because it's called encryption, where it basically is going to change the number and the name on the card and those kinds of things, and it's going to create basically a fake, we'll call it, it's a purchase token. It's going to create a fake name for that payment to go through. It's always going to be tied to your card, so you'll see it show up in your app. But if you have the ability to do with that, it's actually the safest way for you to pay. If you don't have that, or if you're unwilling to put that on your phone, then using Tap to Pay, second most safe method. It'll do a lot of the same things because you're not physically inserting anything into a swiper. It's all digitized the way that it's going. And then using a chip, and then lastly, swiping the card. We'll just say those are kind of the four different, like the tiers of like how you should pay if it's available. So if you go to a place, if you're paying at a gas station and they say you can tap to pay or use Apple Pay, it's much safer for you to do that than for you to physically insert your card. So I would recommend that. It's easy to do. I use it all the time to the point as I literally, in my wallet, you look at it right now, I carry one credit card in my wallet. Everything else is in my phone, just because I don't really feel that. If I go to a place that I have to use the credit card, I'll use it physically, but it is very, very safe to do. These are all of the things I've kind of talked about, how to file a complaint, some phone numbers. If you don't want to write these down, again, I have the things over there, the little handouts, the placards. Feel free to grab them. Again, If you ever have a concern, call our office about these kinds of things. Like I said, we have folks Monday through Friday. And one of the things I really want to emphasize to people is that most of the stuff that we do in our consumer protection division is public. And so let's say you are thinking about buying a car from somebody. You can call our office and say, will you let me know, have you gotten any consumer complaints about so-and-so car dealership? We'll tell you that. Now, we won't dig into, we can't give you like personal information or those kinds of things, and we'll basically say, it's on you to use your best judgment, but we've gotten 13 complaints against them in the past 3 months. Use your best judgment. It's a great resource, and I wish, especially when folks, one of the big ones that I always point out is contractors. That's a great place for you if you're ever thinking about using a contractor to do something at your house, whether it's necessary or unnecessary. They are licensed by the Contractors Board, but we do have the authority to investigate them for any kind of fraud or any kind of, just say, botched jobs. So you can call our office and say, do you have a complaint against so-and-so, and we'll tell you. So again, if you ever have any questions, give us a call, and with that, I'm happy to answer any questions y'all have now.